Hey everyone. Last evening I didn't have my last evening I didn't have my uh audio turned up on Facebook. So I think I'm prepared this evening. Hello, hello. So I hope everyone had an amazing day like I did. Not without challenges, but it was an amazing day, right? I mean, we have a job, we get to do work that we love, or I hope you're getting to do work that you love. And it was an amazing. We have, I remember uh, during COVID, I was one of the persons that were displaced. I went home, and because, as you know, my background is in hospitality, and so hotel closed down, and I remember going home. I remember feeling like lost, right? Like what next? What's going to happen? Because nobody really knew what was going on with COVID. Right? Nobody really knew what was going on with COVID, and so it was a scary time. So I always remember that, and I'm always grateful that even though I may have a tough day, that I get to go to a job that I love, right? I get to get up. I get to go somewhere because one of the things that you would have discovered in COVID, you couldn't go anywhere. And I think so many of us discount that. We discount how important having a routine is. And I got depressed in COVID. I didn't realize what was happening, but I got depressed in COVID. And I also knew that I needed to have a routine to keep on going. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful. So I encourage you to think about that when you have had bad days as leaders or even people showing up on workplaces where you interact with other human beings. Um, Everybody is not alike, everybody is different, and sometimes, it could get a little bit challenging, but at least we have somewhere. We get up in the morning and we have somewhere to go to, something to do, something to preoccupy our day, something, a place where we can give value and get value in return. So I encourage you to take that shift in mindset whenever you have a very difficult day. And so thank you for that was not planned, but thank you for joining me this evening. This evening I am talking about critical conversation. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Waveney and I am a leadership mindset coach and I help new managers or all managers. I'm thinking maybe I should probably change that. I help managers uh, develop leadership influence by mastering their relationships at work and working on their communication. That is what the work I do in the people's brand. And so I've been here all week. If you're just joining me, I've been here all week sharing about different challenges that leaders face, in particular new managers face. And maybe if you don't have the skill set, maybe if someone hasn't, maybe if you didn't have that coach, maybe if you didn't have that person to really hold your hand, you may have encountered these challenges. And so I'm here all week speaking about it. So tonight I've called it critical conversations. Critical conversations. I think on Instagram um my internet dropped. Not sure what's going on with that, but um you'll catch it on the replay. So critical conversations and critical conversations. Um, I remember these are the conversations that are really tricky that we don't like to do. So I remember the very first time I had to suspend someone, right? I remember the very first time I had to suspend someone, actually, it was two individuals. And I was scared, right? I was in HR, I had to suspend them, and the situation was really a little bit tricky. They were um, seen, and I'm choosing my words very carefully. It's not in my current role, um, but they were seen in in a certain position, uh, in a particular area, and in a what we would say in a compromised position, and it was two males. So we had this leader, and she was walking around with a service provider. That particular place had lots of corners and nooks and crannies, and there were these two individuals that were in an uncompromising position. That's the word, uncompromising position, uh, in that space. Uh, and I remember uh, I had to suspend. And as you could imagine, and you can read between the lines, as you can imagine, I was like, oh my God, like, what do I do? I've never had a situation like this. And so I was afraid, I was nervous. These were people that I knew. I was embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. So I had to kind of prepare myself on how to deliver that. And I didn't have much time because I was doing it the very same day. So as you can imagine, it was really uncomfortable. And so the, that is what I mean by critical conversations. Critical conversations when you have to address people on their performance. You have to, and that could be in the form of feedback, maybe really serious feedback. Maybe you're documenting them, maybe you are suspending them, or depending on the organization, maybe you have to sit in a separation meeting, right? And so these conversations are never easy. Critical conversations could also be you setting a boundary and you doing it for the very first time. Like many of you who are new to leadership, you'll probably need to set boundaries for the very first time to people that you know. And this is one of the tasks that people don't like to do. They do not like to do it. Managers don't like to do it. People don't like confrontation. People don't like conflict. They run from it. They avoid it, and it's because it's uncomfortable, right? And so critical conversations is actually module 5 of my communicate to influence coaching program, because I can't teach you how to adjust your mindset. I can't teach you how to shift from and manage from a place from being an individual contributor to a frontline leader, really thinking about team, moving from I to we, or learning how to be influential and leave out the conflict part of it. And so, module 5 in my Communicator Influence Coaching Program is called Critical Conversations, because we all have to have them. We're involved in them in some way, shape, or form. It will happen once you're in a leadership role. And even if you're not in a leadership role, sometimes you have to speak up, you have to set boundaries, you have to, you know, do that sort of thing. And so unsure leaders avoid these types of conversations. Unsure leaders avoid these kinds of conversations. And like I mentioned last night, the reason why it is hard for you The reason why it's hard for many persons is because one is they don't prepare. You sort of go into leadership, you kind of took that job and you didn't really think about it. You didn't really prepare. You didn't really, and when I say prepare, it's not that you can prepare for every single situation, but there's some things that you need to think about, right? If I'm telling you right now that if you want to grow in your career, if you want to be an influential person, an influential leader, be prepared to upset people. Be prepared for people to be upset with you, because it's going to happen. I saw a quote, it's around on the internet, and it said, if you want to make everybody happy, go sell ice cream. Something to that effect. You want to, if you want to make people happy, go sell ice cream. But that, if you want to lead, you can't make everybody happy. It's impossible. And if you are making people happy, it means that you're not doing your job. And you kind of get to the place where you are okay with sort of upsetting the apple cart. You are okay with doing your job and doing it well and knowing that you've done all that you can and being okay with people upset with you. And so you don't want to be an unsure leader that avoids critical conversations. And so I just want to run through a few points. So one of the reasons why unsure leaders avoid performance conversation is that they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to feel the feeling of discomfort. Leadership is about growth, and growth is uncomfortable because it's outside of your norm. But having to face someone and coach them on their performance when you really need to give them feedback can be comfortable, especially if this is someone you have a good relationship, a good working relationship with, if this is someone who maybe it's they perform well on your team and they did something, but it needs to you need to have a conversation. um, it's uncomfortable. These conversations are uncomfortable and people don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the repercussions because sometimes and many times after you've had that conversation, persons get an attitude, and that's something that you sort of have to manage, right? They get an attitude. Like I have leaders coming to me and saying, they told this, I had this conversation, I had to document them, and they told everybody, and people are coming to me and saying X, Y, and Z. And there are ways to manage that, right? And so this is one of the reasons why people don't want to do that. They don't want people upset with them. They want to be liked. Um, and it could be really triggering for someone to really have to confront. But it's all in the way that you do it. It's all in your perception. Because if you view it as a confrontation, you'll show up in that energy. And I can sit here and say it because I've done it so many times, right? Um, I've done so many conversations with people that were not the type of because those are not the type of conversations that you like to have. You don't like to terminate people. Like I don't like to do that. That's a part of my job. I really don't like to do it. Um, but sometimes it has to be done. You don't work for yourself, right? When you work for yourself and you own your own business, you have that leeway. But when you work for people, there are rules and policies. And even if you work for yourself, there comes a point where you have to draw the line in the sand, right? And so unsure leaders avoid these types of discussions because of the discomfort. Growth is about discomfort. It is about that, and this is one of the things that people are prepared for. If you know that you are someone that you really don't like confrontation, that you are not prepared to change, then don't take that leadership. If you know you are not prepared to change, do not take it. If you know that, these types of conversations, make you uncomfortable, but you want to go and you're willing to try, then by all means do that. Okay. So the next reason why unsure leaders avoid these critical conversations is they don't know how to deal with it. It's not a function of they just don't want to. They don't know how to. And many times when people don't know how to do something, it shows up as fear, and it shows up that they just it freezes them, right? They're in a stuck state. Um, and they don't have the tools. They don't have the tools. In many organizations, people have to do the dirty work of their leaders. Like their leaders need to have a conversation. I remember I was talking to someone, I think it was this week, and an incident had happened with an employee with another person. And the person who the incident happened with, the leader, they were in a much higher position, and they wanted this other leader to to address the issue. And I said, no, you shouldn't be doing that. And some people work in organizations where they do that. People, you've got to do these types of things. And so these are things that happen. So people get into, they don't know how, they don't have tools. And this is one of the reasons. The third reason is why people don't want to have these critical conversations is their relationship with that person. Relationships are huge. I spoke about it last night. The person is your work bestie, or you know, they have been, one of the things that I've seen is they've been inappropriate or unprofessional with this person, and now they have to address that performance. And that is why it's so important as a leader that you create that boundary. You have to create that boundary. I always tell people, and I recognize this for myself a very long time ago, that if someone is your friend and you are now in a leadership role, they will respect your position. They will not put you in a position where you have to do certain things, like you have to do your job. And if you're placed in a position where you have to do your job and they're impacted, meaning you have to have a discussion with them, then they're not really a friend and they get upset. They're not really a friend. And that is the way I viewed it, because I've had situations happen to me. I'm like, this person is not my friend, particular situation. And this person isn't my friend because they would not put me in a position where my job is compromised, where my livelihood is compromised. But many persons are unsure leaders. You so want to be liked. You so want to be liked that you want to be liked by the wrong people. You know, this journey of being a leader, I think, is a journey of self, of knowing yourself. That's why you would hear me say it starts with you. The journey to leadership starts with self, with knowing yourself. You have to be okay with being the bad guy sometimes. And you have to almost, like, for me, I know I am coming from a good place, right? And when I say that, I mean this. I do this is the way I live. I do every possible thing in my power to do. I told someone that, I think it was today or yesterday, that when it is in your power to do good, you do good. You cannot use your leadership. You cannot use your um, influence. You cannot use your authority while you're in a leadership role uh, to manipulate, to intimidate, to do whatever the hell you want, right? You have to use it for good. Your job as a leader is to coach, is to guide, is to support, is to provide a resource, is to create that environment that your team can thrive so that they are able to meet the goals of the organization. That is your role. And you do that through the different tasks and the way you behave and the way you act and that so forth and so on. But your job is really to be a resource, support, guide, hold people accountable if you must, because you know there's some accountability. Reward them, recognize them. That is what I mean by doing good. So when it is in your power to do good, you do that. And from that place, when you need to have those conversations in your heart, in your consciousness, in your heart, you would know that you would have done every possible thing. That is the way I lead. That is the way I lead. I see someone on Instagram saying the truth. Yeah, that's the way I lead. That is why when I sit to have certain conversations, I sit in a, not arrogance, but I sit in a truth, in a knowing that I have done enough, that I am being fair. Because remember, again, in my role as HR, and I take that role very seriously, um, I try to be fair to the point where sometimes when other leaders don't like the answer that I give them, I get the cold shoulder and I get the pettiness and but I, in my role as a leader, not because you and I are on the same level, not because we are peers, and it means that if you are wrong, I'm going to support you. I will never do that. I will never do that, right? Um, I have to be able to see that, and that is how I lead. So I am sharing with you that as a leader, when you go into these roles, you do all you can for your team. Provide the support. I know I'm repeating myself, but I have to get this out, and I can't stress it enough. You do the good that you can do. You provide the resource. You remove the barriers for them. You give them the support, you train them, you coach them, you reward them, you recognize them, you hold them accountable, right? And if it reaches the point where you have to have those critical conversations, you will sit in that knowing and that truth. You will feel badly. I'm not saying that you don't feel bad. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying that you don't feel, because you're human. You're human. You're human, especially if it reaches to the point where, you know, your job and livelihood is impacted. But you will sit in a knowing and a truth that I have done all I can for this person. I've provided the resource. I have told them my expectations. And this is a huge one. This is a huge one. When you step into that leadership role, you really need to share the expectation. And this is in one of my modules. You have to set that expectation. You have to set the expectation with the team so they know who they are working with. They understand your style. They understand what is acceptable and what is not. And this is what I talk of when what I mean by being prepared. These are the things that you don't learn in management school. You probably, when they promote you, someone isn't going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you in this detail. But you set the expectation. When you set a standard and you set an expectation with someone, they know that people will try to go outside the standard. You just have to set the expectation. And you will sit in that truth and that knowing that you've done it, right? So that's some 399 for you. 399 for you. So what happens when you don't have those critical conversations? What really happens if you just decide you're listening to this live stream and you know what Waveney is saying, it sounds good, but I just don't want to change. I don't want that discomfort. I don't like feeling that way in myself. I really want to be liked. I really want to be an ice cream truck driver and not a leader secretly. I'm just here for the money and the title. What happens if you leave it unchecked? Well, the first thing will happen, it will it undermines your credibility um, with yourself. You're not operating in integrity, and it undermines your credibility with your team. And people talk behind your back. They're going to talk behind your back regardless, but they're going to talk behind your back even more. You undermine your credibility with your team because when leaders don't address behavior, what usually happens is your high performers, they go, they leave. They can't take on the nonsense. They can't take on the bullshit. They're not about that life because you are pulling them down. They're operating at a high standard, and here you have behaviors that are left unattended, people doing what they want or what have you, whatever the situation is. Um, it undermines your credibility. It does undermine your credibility. And, you know, people will say, well, I have a boss and my boss isn't doing anything. But if you are in a position where you are seeing someone doing something, then you need to talk to them. You need to pull them aside and talk to them, right? And then two, what happens if you leave it? You rob the person of the gift of change and feedback. You're robbing them. So imagine someone is doing something and maybe no one has had the courage to speak to them about it. But and that usually happens there. Uh, People on a team, somebody on a team, somebody's doing something, a leader is behaving a particular way. Everybody's talking about it behind their back. Everybody knows about it, but nobody has really addressed it with the person. You are robbing that person of feedback, the gift of feedback, because feedback is a gift. Even if it isn't what you want to hear, it is a gift because we have we can't see everything about ourselves. We don't know everything about ourselves. There is a hidden, there is an aspect of ourselves that is hidden from us. A particular behavior, something we do, maybe a nervous tick, maybe every time we say something, we just, something. And unless you are one, super self reflective, but even then, or you have someone giving you that feedback as a gift, you are not aware of it. You are not aware of it. And so feedback is a gift because when you are aware of things, you can change them. If you're not aware of it, you cannot change them. All right. So the next point is what happens if you leave the critical conversation. You're not going to do it. You're not going to follow my 399 coaching advice tonight is that you stunt your growth. You stunt your growth. And I can tell you, I mean, everything I tell you is the truth. I have lived it, but I will tell you this for a fact. It gets easier. It gets easier. It, it gets easier. Giving these types of critical conversation, it gets easier. And what I find is you develop a style and a rhythm of giving that uncomfortable that feedback, right? That critical conversation. There's a particular way I have those conversations. Okay. And I'll give you one. My voice gets soft. My voice gets softer. Initially, I go into the conversation and my voice gets for the delivery of what I'm about to tell the person. It only raises if the person is maybe disrespectful or I'm trying to get attention or something. Uh, I'm trying to establish some, and that has only happened a few times, right? But my voice gets soft because in those moments, it's not about being right. You still have to remember this is a person, this is a human being. They've made a mistake. It's not about you being self-righteous, right? and so my voice drops. Okay, somebody on Instagram is saying feedback with the right motive and correct tone makes it for sure, for sure. Feedback with the right motive and the correct tone makes a world of difference. And one of the things that I will tell you, you never have these conversations when you're upset. Don't make a decision when you're upset either. Don't do it. Don't write an email. Don't have a critical conversation when you're upset. Don't do it. Do not do it because you're going to regret it. You are going to regret it. The world will not end if you don't have that conversation today. If it's something that's really upsetting, you calm all the way down. You calm all the way down, and then you can have that in a next at the next day, right? Or at a next time. But you stunt your growth when you don't have these conversations because there are levels to these things. The more you have these types of conversations, you will learn about yourself, you will learn about people, you will learn about your style and your rhythm, and you will get a taste of how you deliver these types of conversations, right? And then you will recognize, hey, actually, I could do this a little better, or I could, maybe this is what you know, I shouldn't probably have said that because after each conversation, I ask myself, what could I have done differently, right? But communication is ongoing. Communication is ongoing. There are levels to it. You might master critical conversation with your team. At first, it's difficult to tell somebody, hey, you really messed up, or you need to pay attention. You're not doing this, or you're not doing that, or I need for you to do X, Y, and Z, or here's the correct way. And so you initially you go in, you're afraid of delivering those types of communication with your team, but then you find, hey, okay, I have a pace, I have a rhythm, I'm getting it right. But then you will find that the challenge is having that conversation with your boss, or having that conversation with a peer, or having that conversation, like for me in HR, right? I can tell you, it's not just the line employees. Many times I have to give feedback to my peers, right? Many times. And at first, it was very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable because these are people who may have been in the industry, um, you know, more years than I am. So all these things come up, like insecurities come up, right? These are people who may have, degrees or have this or that or this type of education or they're at this level, right? And you have to provide that. And so, again, it's another learning curve. So, communication is ongoing in this experience, right? But on this journey, but if you stop at the discomfort that is now that giving your team feedback, then you're not going to graduate the other levels because there are levels to communication. There are levels to communication. All right. And we don't want you to stunt your growth. And so the last point, what happens if you leave these conversations, then boundaries are never created. You don't create boundaries. You do not create boundaries. And this is something that I spoke about earlier. You need to be able to create boundaries in your leadership role. You need to be able to tell people this, you and I, and I'm going to go very local and very Caribbean. You and I lime, you and I hang out, but what you're doing, you're compromising my position, and that's not cool. I don't like it. Please stop it, right? Those type of boundaries, or you have to create boundaries with your team, right? You're not here to be liked. You're not here. This is not a popularity contest, right? These are the kinds of. That is why it's so important to work on yourself because um people sometimes use their position and their title and They use it. And when you're in a leadership role, there's some people who know how to play this game very well and they will feed your ego, right? They will come and they'll tell you this, they'll come and they'll tell you that, they'll come and they'll rat on other people, right? Or they'll gossip to you about other people, like, hey, just so you know, that sort of thing. And you've got to be aware of what is going on, right? If you're not grounded in yourself, you'll take that, you'll feed your ego. And some people I've seen they use leadership, the authority and the power that comes with that for the wrong reasons. You're not here for that. That's why it's important to know yourself. If you have those issues, you need to go to therapy. You need to go to therapy. A lot of us in the Caribbean really need some therapeutic work, right? I'm just a coach. I'm not a therapist, but you really need to get to know yourself and you really need to understand what you are about when you're in this leadership journey. You're not here to be like, have friends that like you, have a boyfriend, have a husband. That's what your mom is for. Ground yourself so that when you have to set these boundaries, so that when you have to have these critical conversations, you stand in the truth and the knowing that you have done enough, right? And so this is what I wanted to share with you about critical conversations. They are not easy. They are not easy, but there's a way to go about it. It's a way to go about it. And I speak about this, I coach you more on this in my Communicate to Influence coaching program where we work together for 90 days. And I walk beside you um, and help you to develop. I give you the framework, I give you the tools um, that you can use to become an influential leader. No, if you are not ready, if you're unsure, if you're not ready to sign up for that coaching program, then there are different ways that you can work with. And I think what I'll do tomorrow, I didn't have a special topic for tomorrow. So what I think I will do tomorrow is I'm gonna speak about my different programs and ways that you can work with me. But right now, I have a 3 day leadership challenge that is, if you're on Instagram, if you head to my bio, it's the very first link in the bio. And it gives you an easy way to work with me to see what my style is. It's a 3 day, 1, 2, 3 leadership challenge, right? If you sign up today, then you will get the first email tomorrow. Tomorrow is what? Thursday? Thursday, Friday, Saturday. See, that's it. And it's an easy way for you to see what my style is like. It's an email channel, right? Um, and so that's one way. Another way is this coaching program that I'm talking about. But tomorrow I'll share with you what these programs are, each one in detail. And because when I first started, I started with communicate to influence. And then as people started asking questions and having different needs, I have other programs that is there. And so thank you for joining me. I really hope that you found this conversation interesting, insightful. I really hope that you took something away that can help you on your leadership journey. And if something that I've said has helped you, send me a DM, send me a WhatsApp. My WhatsApp, my business WhatsApp is on my profile somewhere. So send me a WhatsApp. Let me know. Let me know how I have helped you, and if there's content that you'd like me to share and speak more of a particular leadership topic, send it to me. I will be more than happy to put something together because what I usually do is I have my weeks broken up by themes, right? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Someone on Instagram said I learned a lot. Great content. Thank you. But I have my week broken up in themes. So if there's something, a particular struggle or challenge that you are facing and you'd like for me to put more content on that, I can do that. And then tomorrow I'll share the more ways that we can work together. So thank you for joining me. Share this out with someone that, maybe is going into a leadership role that needs to hear this, or share this out with your work bestie. Thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow. I think I may be on at 8 o'clock tomorrow because at work we have this, we're doing a walk. And so I think I'll be on tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So I'm gonna just look for the flyer that says the time. All right. So bye everybody. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow.